Your kindness may not be kindness at all. It may be fear wearing the mask of virtue, because there is a difference between a good person and a harmless person. A good person can say no. A harmless person cannot. A good person has the capacity for aggression, but chooses control. A harmless person avoids conflict, even when it destroys them. And most people never notice the difference. They call themselves nice. They avoid arguments. They apologize too quickly. They say it's okay when it isn't. They smile while resentment slowly poisons them for the inside. Not because they are peaceful, but because somewhere in their life, they learned that honesty was dangerous, so they became agreeable, predictable, safe. They learned to suppress anger, hide boundaries, and silence every instinct that could make other people uncomfortable. But the human mind does not erase aggression. It buries it. And what is buried does not disappear. It waits. In passive aggression, in quiet resentment, in self-hatred, in the exhausting feeling that people keep taking from you, while giving nothing back. This is the paradox of the nice person. The more you suppress your shadow to become acceptable, the less respect the world gives you, because the world can sense when your kindness is genuine and when it is simply fear of rejection. You tell yourself you are simply a calm person, easygoing, understanding, mature. You avoid unnecessary conflict. You try to see the good in people. You stay quiet when others lose control. But look closer. How many times have you said yes while every part of you wanted to say no? How many times have you agreed to things just to avoid disappointing someone? You answer messages immediately, even when you're exhausted. You apologize, even when you did nothing wrong. You let people interrupt you, disrespect you, cross your boundaries in small ways, and each time, you tell yourself it is not worth making a problem, so you swallow it, again and again and again, until your personality becomes a performance. You smile when you are irritated. You say no worries when there are worries. You pretend to understand people while secretly feeling drained by them. And the strangest part is, most nice people are not actually peaceful. They are overwhelmed. They're constantly monitoring the emotions of everyone around them, trying not to upset anyone, trying not to create tension, trying not to be rejected. So they become careful. Careful with their words, careful with their opinions, careful with their anger. And over time, they stop asking themselves a dangerous question. What do I actually want? Because the moment they feel anger, guilt immediately follows. The moment they feel resistance, they suppress it. The moment they want to say no, fear takes over. So instead, they become emotionally invisible, and little by little, they lose the ability to tell the difference between kindness and self-betrayal. But something begins to happen to a person who lives this way for too long. The anger does not disappear. It changes form, because suppressed emotion does not die quietly. It waits underground, and eventually it starts leaking into everything, not as direct aggression, but as irritation, sarcasm, emotional exhaustion, silent resentment toward people who seem free to speak honestly. You begin to feel angry at others for demands they never forced you to accept. You say yes and secretly hate them for hearing it. That is the paradox. The nice person often believes they are protecting others from pain, while slowly poisoning themselves in silence, and the mind cannot carry that contradiction forever. Sooner or later, the shadow begins to reveal itself. Sometimes through passive aggression, a cold tone, a delayed reply, a fake smile hiding contempt. Sometimes through emotional numbness, you stop feeling connected to people, conversations become performance, empathy becomes exhaustion, and sometimes the shadow erupts all at once, months or years of suppressed anger exploding over something small, a single comment, a small disrespect, one unexpected betrayal. And suddenly the person who never gets angry becomes terrifying. Not because the anger appeared in that moment, but because it had been buried for years. This is why many nice people secretly feel disconnected from themselves. They are living two separate identities: the person they show to the world and the person trapped underneath it. One is polite, controlled, pleasant. The other is furious. And the more aggressively someone suppresses that side of themselves, the darker it becomes. Because rejected emotions do not become weaker, they become unconscious. And unconscious anger is dangerous because the person no longer controls it. It controls them. Carl Jung believed that every human being carries a hidden side of themselves, a part of the personality pushed out of awareness. He called it the shadow. The shadow is not just evil. It is everything you were taught to reject: aggression, selfishness, pride, desire, honesty, the ability to say no, the instinct to fight back. And for the nice person, these traits often become completely buried because somewhere early in life, they learned a dangerous lesson. If people see this side of me, I will lose love. So the mind begins to split itself apart. One side becomes socially acceptable, polite, safe, easy to control, and the other side is locked away in darkness. But Jung warned about something most people never understand. What you suppress does not disappear. It becomes unconscious, and once something becomes unconscious, it begins controlling you from the shadows. This is why people who appear extremely kind sometimes become unexpectedly cruel. Why people who avoid conflict secretly fantasize about revenge. Why people who constantly preach compassion often carry enormous hidden rage. Because the shadow doesn't want to stay buried. It wants to be seen. And the more intensely you deny it, the more power it gains over your life. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Most people hear this quote, but never truly understand it, because they imagine the shadow as something monstrous. But often, the shadow begins with something much simpler: the ability to disappoint someone, the ability to say no, without guilt, without panic, without needing permission. For many nice people, that feels terrifying. Not because they're weak, but because they built their entire identity around being accepted. And the shadow threatens that identity, because the shadow asks dangerous questions. What if your kindness is performative? What if your politeness is fear? What if the person you became was simply the version least likely to be rejected? This is why confronting the shadow feels so uncomfortable. It forces you to see the parts of yourself that were sacrificed in order to survive socially. Your anger, your boundaries, your ambition, your capacity for aggression. But Jung believes something even more important. The goal is not to destroy the shadow. The goal is to integrate it. The world does not judge you by your intentions. It judges you by your behavior. And this is where the nice person encounters a brutal reality most people never say out loud. Predictable kindness is often interpreted as weakness, not consciously, but instinctively, because human beings constantly read signals of boundaries, confidence, and emotional strength. And when someone repeatedly sacrifices themselves to avoid conflict, people notice. They notice when you hesitate before speaking, when you laugh nervously, when you apologize too quickly, when your yes comes before your own thoughts. And over time, the social world begins responding to you differently. People interrupt you more, respect your time less, push your boundaries further, expect emotional labor from you without reciprocity, not because everyone is evil, but because humans naturally test limits, and if no limits appear, they keep moving forward. This is the part many nice people struggle to accept. They believe morality alone should protect them, that if they are understanding enough, patient enough, selfless enough, the world will eventually reward them with respect. But social reality does not work that way. The world respects clarity. It respects boundaries. It respects people who can create discomfort when necessary. Even Niccolo Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He observed that people are deeply influenced by power, perception, and consequences. And whether we like it or not, human beings behave differently around those who appear incapable of resistance. Because if someone senses that you will tolerate everything, they unconsciously stop valuing your limits. This is why the nice person often becomes trapped in invisible social contracts, always available, always understanding, always forgiving, until they slowly become psychologically consumed by other people's needs. And the tragedy is, many of them believe this makes them virtuous, but constant self-erasure is not virtue. It is surrender. Real kindness has weight behind it. It contains choice. Because a person who is incapable of confrontation is not choosing peace. They are avoiding danger, and people can feel that difference immediately. There is a strange psychological law in human interaction. The less willing you are to defend your boundaries, the less real those boundaries become to others. This is why suppressed aggression eventually destroys respect. Not only the respect others have for you, but the respect you have for yourself. Because deep down, you know when you abandon your own instincts just to remain acceptable. And eventually the mind begins to resent the role it is forced to play, the permanently agreeable person, the emotionally safe person, the person who never becomes dangerous enough to be taken seriously. So what is the solution? It is not becoming cruel, not becoming cold, not becoming selfish, not becoming emotionally numb, and it is certainly not turning your pain into hatred for other people. The solution is something far more difficult: integrated aggression, the ability to access aggression consciously without becoming controlled by it. Because aggression itself is not evil. Aggression is what allows a human being to protect boundaries, to speak honestly, to resist manipulation, to survive psychologically in a world that constantly pressures people into submission. Without aggression, there is no real individuality, only compliance. This is what many nice people misunderstand. They think aggression means violence, dominance, explosions of anger. But healthy aggression is often quiet. It is the calm ability to say no without over-explaining, without guilt, without needing to be liked afterward. Integrated aggression means your kindness is no longer automatic. It becomes a conscious choice. You help people because you genuinely want to, not because you're terrified of disappointing them. You become capable of confrontation without losing control of yourself. And strangely, this is the moment people begin respecting you more. Not because you became intimidating, but because your behavior finally contains weight, boundaries, consequences, self-respect. Carl Jung once said, "The most dangerous individual is the one who has become conscious of their own shadow." Because that person no longer needs to pretend. They understand their capacity for anger, for confrontation, for darkness. But instead of repressing it, they learn to direct it. That is real control, not the fragile self-control of suppression, where resentment silently grows beneath the surface. But conscious control, the kind that comes from no longer being afraid of your own instincts. And this changes the way you move through the world. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop apologizing for existing. You stop shaping your personality around other people's comfort. For the first time, your kindness becomes voluntary. And voluntary kindness is powerful, because now it carries an unspoken truth. I am capable of becoming dangerous. I simply choose discipline instead. The first step toward integrating the shadow is brutally simple. You must begin noticing every moment you betray yourself. For 1 week, pay attention to every automatic yes, every fake smile, every forced agreement, every moment your body says no, but your mouth says yes anyway. Write them down. Not to judge yourself, just to see the pattern clearly for the first time, because most people are not conscious of how often they abandon themselves to maintain approval. Notice what happens inside you in those moments, the tension in your chest, the hesitation before speaking, the instant wave of guilt when you imagine disappointing someone. That reaction is important because it reveals something deeper. Your nervous system has been trained to associate boundaries with danger. And until you become aware of that conditioning, you will continue sacrificing yourself automatically. Then begin practicing something uncomfortable. Small acts of honest resistance, not aggression, not hostility, just truth. Say, I can't, I disagree, no. Without explanation, without trying to soften it into something painless. At first, it will feel wrong. Your mind will panic. Your body will tense. You will feel selfish. But you are not becoming cruel. You are rebuilding the part of yourself that disappeared through years of suppression. And slowly, something begins to change. The fear weakens. Your words become cleaner. Your presence becomes heavier. People stop sensing unlimited access to you. And most importantly, you begin respecting yourself again. Because every boundary you defend sends a message to your own mind. My needs are real. This is where transformation begins. Not when you become emotionless, not when you dominate people, but when you stop being afraid of your own strength. The goal was never to destroy the shadow. The goal was to stop running from it, to stand face to face with the parts of yourself you buried, and integrate them consciously. Because the most dangerous person is not the angry person, nor the ruthless one. It is the person who has access to aggression, but remains disciplined enough to control it. A person who can become dangerous without becoming destructive. Someone capable of confrontation without cruelty. Power without chaos. That is real confidence, and that is the final paradox. True kindness only becomes real when you are fully capable of being dangerous, but choose restraint instead.